The Wyoming air was sharp and dry that morning, heavy with dust and the faint scent of gunpowder. The sun, a blazing white coin in the sky, glared down on the open shooting range where a crowd of shooters, veterans, and onlookers had gathered. Among them stood Maya Collins, a young woman in a faded green jacket and worn boots, her dark hair tied back under a baseball cap. She was small compared to the men around her, but there was a quiet steadiness about her, something that didn't need size to command attention. Across from her, Sergeant Luke Bradford was laughing, his voice carrying across the range like a challenge wrapped in arrogance. 2,000 meters? He repeated, still chuckling as he shook his head. You sure you don't mean 200? That's the kind of distance people actually hit, sweetheart. His buddies, a group of weekend marksmen with military tattoos and big personalities, burst into laughter. The sound rolled through the air, bouncing off the steel targets glinting in the sunlight. Maya didn't flinch. She was used to the laughter. She'd been hearing it for years, at ranges, in competitions, even online. Whenever she showed up with her custom rifle, someone would always joke that she was there to pose for a picture rather than shoot. But this time felt different. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the way the men's eyes seemed to weigh her down, measuring her against their own egos. Or maybe it was Luke's smirk, a look that said he'd already decided she'd fail. Maya's hands moved with practiced calm as she set her rifle case on the table. The heavy click of the latches echoed like a heartbeat. She opened it slowly, revealing a matte black precision rifle with polished metal gleaming along the edges. It wasn't new. There were scratches near the stock, faint marks of use, but it was clean, loved, and cared for. Someone in the crowd whistled. That's no beginner's toy. Luke folded his arms. Nice rifle. Shame it's going to miss everything past 500 yards. The remark earned him another round of laughter. Maya ignored him. She began assembling her setup, adjusting the bipod, setting her rangefinder, checking the wind meter. Her movements were smooth, confident, almost ritualistic. Every detail mattered, the distance, the elevation, the light. She'd done this hundreds of times before. The target sat 2,000 meters away, 2 kilometers of shimmering air and shifting heat mirages. The steel plate was barely visible to the naked eye, a small gray dot against the horizon. To most shooters, it was an impossible distance. Even trained snipers rarely hit such shots cleanly without advanced scopes or wind compensation systems. But Maya didn't look intimidated. She crouched low beside her rifle, aligning it carefully. The barrel pointed like an arrow toward the distant horizon. Her breath slowed. Around her, the range buzzed with excitement. People pulling out phones to record, whispering bets under their breath. Hey, Luke, one man said, grinning. You sure you want to go through with this? You're going to look bad when she actually hits it. Luke smirked, unconcerned. If she hits that target, I'll clean her rifle for a month. That made the crowd laugh again. But there was a small pause this time, a hesitation. Maybe it was something in Maya's expression. Her stillness wasn't nervousness. It was focus. She looked through her scope, scanning the distant steel plate. The world seemed to shrink to a single line between her and the target. She checked her calculations. Wind speed to 6 miles per hour west. Temperature, 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Altitude to 4,200 feet. She adjusted her turret clicks accordingly. The small click-click-click sounds crisp and precise. Luke walked closer, hands on his hips. You sure you want to do this in front of all these people? He asked. You could always back out now. No shame in knowing your limits. Maya finally looked up. Her eyes met his, calm and unwavering. Everyone has limits, she said softly. Some people just don't know theirs until they're tested. For a moment, the smirk faded from Luke's face. Then he laughed again, rushing it off. Maya turned back to her rifle. Her heart beat slow and steady. She could feel the dry air scraping her throat, the heat pressing against her back. But she didn't think about any of that. Her mind was somewhere else, in another time, another place. She remembered the smell of gun oil and sawdust from her father's small garage. She remembered being 8 years old, watching him clean his rifle at the table, the way he'd hum softly to himself while he worked. "It's not about the weapon," he used to say. "It's about the mind behind it. A calm hand comes from a calm heart." He had been a Marine sniper, one of the best. He died overseas when she was still a child. But every time she picked up a rifle, it felt like he was right there beside her. "Spotter ready?" she called. Her friend Noah, a quiet man with a gentle demeanor, adjusted his binoculars beside her. "Ready when you are. Wind check? 6.5 west, dropping slightly." "Copy." She inhaled slowly. Her thumb brushed the trigger guard. Every muscle in her body aligned with her breath, steady, unhurried. The crowd hushed. The laughter stopped. Even Luke seemed to realize this wasn't a game anymore. The way she moved, the focus in her eyes, this was something beyond ego. A bead of sweat rolled down Maya's temple. She adjusted her scope one last time, aligning the reticle perfectly. In that instant, the world disappeared. There was no crowd, no heat, no sound, only the faint heartbeat of the earth and the whisper of wind. She exhaled. Then she squeezed the trigger. The rifle roared, breaking the silence. The recoil slammed against her shoulder, but her eyes never left the scope. The bullet tore through the dry air, spinning faster than sound. For nearly 3 seconds, the world held its breath. Then, a faint metallic ping echoed from the horizon. Noah's voice broke the silence. "Hit," he shouted, stunned. "Dead center." For a moment, no one spoke. The echo lingered, drifting through the still air. Then the crowd erupted. Cheers, gasps, applause. The whole range exploded with disbelief and excitement. People shouted, whistled, recorded on their phones. Someone yelled, "She actually hit it." Luke stood frozen, mouth open, eyes wide. He looked out toward the distant target through his binoculars, as if needing proof his own eyes couldn't accept. There it was, a small, clean dent right in the middle of the steel plate. Maya lowered her rifle, her expression unchanged. No smile, no gloat, just calm. She reached for her water bottle, took a sip, and nodded toward Noah. "Good call on the wind," she said simply. Noah chuckled in disbelief. "You just made history, Maya. That was perfect." The crowd pressed closer, some asking questions, others just wanting to shake her hand. She politely nodded, but kept quiet. She wasn't there for fame. She wasn't even there for pride. She was there for something far more personal, to prove that her father's lessons still lived in her hands, that patience could defeat arrogance, and that silence sometimes spoke louder than victory speeches. As the excitement buzzed around her, Luke finally stepped forward, still shaken, but trying to regain his confidence. He forced a grin. "Lucky shot," he said, his tone half joking, half defensive. "Try doing it blindfolded next time." The crowd laughed again, but this time not entirely at Maya. Some were laughing with her. Maya turned her head slightly, her lips curling into the faintest smile. "Careful what you wish for, Sergeant," she said softly. And with that, she packed her rifle, the sun casting long shadows across the range, the beginning of a story no one there would ever forget. The echo of that perfect shot still hung in the air long after the crowd's cheers had faded. The Wyoming sun had dipped lower now, casting long golden lines across the barren shooting range. Dust swirled lazily around the metal tables. The smell of gunpowder still clung to the air, like an unspoken memory. But beneath the noise, beneath the laughter, and the whispers of disbelief, there was something else, something quiet and heavy. Doubt. Luke Bradford stood with his arms folded, staring out toward the target, as if hoping the dent in the steel might disappear. He'd seen hundreds of shooters, trained dozens, competed in military-level matches, but he'd never seen anything like that. Hitting a 2,000-meter shot required not only perfect equipment, but also perfect awareness of wind, angle, and elevation. And yet, she had made it look like a simple warm-up. Still, pride wouldn't let him admit what he'd witnessed. It was luck, he muttered to himself. Everyone gets one miracle. A few of his friends laughed nervously, echoing his denial. But even they weren't convinced. Maya sat on the edge of the bench, quietly cleaning her rifle. Her hands moved with rhythmic precision. Cloth, oil, metal, repeat. Her focus was absolute, her breathing calm. She didn't gloat, didn't even look up as people crowded around her, trying to ask how she'd done it. Was that wind calculation or instinct? Are you military trained? Is that even possible without tech assistance? She answered none of them. The only sound from her table was the soft scrape of a cleaning rod sliding through the barrel. Noah, her spotter and longtime friend, watched silently beside her. He'd seen that look before, the calm before the storm. Maya wasn't angry. She was thinking, reflecting, replaying every moment of the shot, not out of vanity, but discipline. Luke, however, couldn't stand the silence. He finally stepped forward, his boots crunching on gravel. "All right," he said loudly, forcing a grin. "You got lucky once. But even a broken clock's right twice a day." The crowd quieted again. Maya slowly looked up, her eyes meeting his. "You really believe that was luck?" she asked softly. "I know it," Luke said confidently. "That distance? Wind like that? The odds were 1 in 1,000. He leaned closer, smirking. "You hit the target, great, but you'll never do it again." Maya didn't respond. She just studied him, not with anger, but pity. "You sound like someone who's afraid of being wrong," she said finally. The crowd murmured. Luke's face hardened. "Excuse me? You've spent so long being the best shot here that you forgot what humility feels like," Maya continued. "And when someone else proves it's possible, you call it luck. That's not confidence, Sergeant. That's fear disguised as pride." For a moment, Luke said nothing. He wanted to fire back, to laugh again. But her tone wasn't mocking. It was quiet and steady, cutting sharper than any insult. He scoffed and walked away, pretending to brush her words off. But deep inside, something unsettled him. The range began to empty as the sky deepened into orange. People lingered, still whispering about what they'd seen. Maya ignored them. She kept cleaning her rifle, lost in her own world. The steady motion of her hands seemed to anchor her, a small act of control in a place full of noise and doubt. When she was finished, she carefully placed the weapon back in its case and closed it with a soft click. Noah broke the silence first. "You shouldn't let him get to you," he said quietly. "You proved your point. Everyone here saw it." Maya gave a faint smile. "He's not the problem," she said. "He's just the voice of everyone who told me I couldn't." Noah frowned. "You mean my instructors, my competitors, even my own teammates once?" She exhaled, slowly looking toward the horizon where the target shimmered faintly in the dying light. "Every time I shot better than someone expected, they said it was luck. Every time I failed, they said it was because I didn't belong." Noah didn't reply. He didn't need to. He'd been there through most of it, the long nights, the missed meals, the endless hours of practice when everyone else had gone home. He'd seen her push herself past exhaustion, Not because she wanted to prove anything to others, but because she couldn't stand letting herself down. "You know," she said softly, "when my father used to train, he said something that stuck with me." "What's that?" "People who mock your effort are just afraid of your silence." Noah smiled faintly. "Sounds like something he'd say." Maya nodded. Her father's words were like old bullets. They never rusted, never faded. He had taught her that mastery wasn't about being better than others, but about being better than yesterday's you. She stood and brushed the dust from her jeans. The air had cooled, and the sun was dipping below the ridge. A calm hush fell over the range. Behind her, Luke was packing his gear angrily, muttering under his breath to his friends. But Maya didn't look back. She didn't need validation. The hit spoke for itself. Still, as she loaded her case into her truck, she couldn't shake one feeling. This wasn't over. Something about Luke's tone, that bitter refusal to believe, told her he wasn't done. And she was right. The next morning, when Maya returned to the range to train alone, she found a crowd already there. Luke stood at the center, arms crossed, grinning like a showman. A banner had been hastily tied to the fence. Rematch. 2,000 meters, no excuses. Reporters had shown up. Local news cameras were setting up tripods. It had all gone viral overnight. The girl who hit 2,000 meters. Social media was on fire. People demanded proof. Was it real? Was it luck? Could she do it again? Maya froze for a moment. She hated attention. But she also knew walking away would let doubt win. Luke spotted her and waved mockingly. "Morning, sharpshooter. Didn't think you'd actually show." She dropped her rifle case beside the table. "You asked for a rematch," she said. "So here I am." He grinned. "Good. But this time, let's make it interesting." "How?" "If you hit the target again, blindfolded, I'll not only admit you're better, I'll donate my entire month's paycheck to a charity of your choice. But if you miss, you walk away from the range for good." The crowd gasped. Maya stared at him, silent. She could feel the eyes on her, the pressure rising like a tide. It wasn't about the money. It was about pride, his and hers. Noah whispered, "You don't have to do this, Maya." But she wasn't listening. She was already calculating. She didn't like being pushed, but she knew something Luke didn't. She had trained for this kind of shooting, not blindfolded, but by feel. Her father had taught her that the body remembers what the mind doubts. Finally, she looked up at Luke. "Fine," she said. "But when I hit it, and I will, you'll admit this was never about skill. It was about respect." The crowd erupted again, half cheering, half stunned. The local news camera zoomed in. Luke smiled smugly. Heel. He didn't realize that in challenging her again, he hadn't just reignited a competition. He'd awakened something else, something far older and more powerful than pride. As the reporters swarmed around, Maya quietly unpacked her rifle. The metal glimmered in the morning light. Her hands were steady, her mind clear. Noah stood beside her, whispering, "He doesn't know what he's started, does he?" Maya smiled faintly. "No, but he's about to find out." The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Luke strutted about, playing to the cameras, confident he had her cornered. But Maya wasn't watching him anymore. She was watching the wind, listening to it, feeling the rhythm of the earth beneath her boots. She wasn't thinking about Luke. She was thinking about her father. About every night she'd trained blindfolded, memorizing distances by the sound of her own breath. The challenge wasn't about proving Luke wrong. It was about proving her father right, that a calm heart always finds its mark. And as the range grew silent once more, the next chapter of her legend was already being written in the space between her heartbeat and the horizon. Before the world knew her name, before the videos and interviews in roaring crowds, Maya Collins was just a quiet girl from Bozeman, Montana, a girl who spent more time listening to the wind than talking to people. Her story didn't begin at a shooting range. It began in a small wooden house at the edge of a pine forest, where mornings smelled of coffee and gun oil, and the walls echoed with silence that never seemed to fade. Her father, Staff Sergeant Daniel Collins, had been a Marine sniper, one of the best. To everyone else, he was a war hero. To Maya, he was a distant voice in photographs and folded flags. He was killed in Afghanistan when she was 4 years old, leaving behind a box of medals, a rifle, and a legacy that felt too heavy for such small hands to hold. Her mother, Sarah Collins, worked double shifts as a nurse, trying to raise her daughter with warmth while the world outside seemed cold. But Sarah could never quite understand her daughter's obsession with silence, or why Maya spent hours staring at her father's rifle case in the corner of the living room. Maya wasn't fascinated by violence. She was fascinated by focus. Even as a child, she'd been drawn to precision, lining up pebbles by size, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder, memorizing the rhythm of raindrops on her window. The world was loud and chaotic, but when she focused on something small and steady, it became quiet, controlled, peaceful. At 12, she found her father's shooting journal tucked beneath an old photo album. The pages smelled like dust and oil. His handwriting was neat and sharp, lines of notes about wind speed, breathing control, trigger discipline, and one sentence underlined twice: "The rifle doesn't shoot. You do." That sentence changed everything. From that day on, Maya was obsessed. She studied her father's notes like scripture. She watched videos of snipers, read manuals, and saved every dollar to buy her first .22 rifle, a cheap second-hand model that jammed every other shot. But it didn't matter. She was learning. Her mother disapproved at first. "You're chasing ghosts," she said one night, standing in the doorway as Maya cleaned the old rifle at the table. Maya didn't look up. "I'm chasing understanding," she replied quietly. Sarah sighed, torn between pride and fear. "Your father lived by that weapon, Maya, and it took him from us." Maya finally looked up, her voice soft but firm. "No, Mom. He lived by his purpose. The rifle was just how he carried it." Her mother said nothing after that. She didn't understand it, but she didn't stop her either. By 16, Maya was training in the Montana wilderness, alone, in snow and wind, with nothing but her rifle and her father's journal. She didn't have fancy scopes or professional coaching. She had instinct, patience, and the endless echo of her father's words in her mind. She trained not just her eyes, but her ears. She'd blindfold herself, fire into the distance, and listen for the sound of the bullet striking steel. Every miss became a lesson. Every echo, a teacher. The neighbors thought she was strange, the quiet girl with the rifle, always chasing invisible targets. But slowly, her accuracy sharpened. By 18, she could hit a soda can at 800 yards, a shot most trained marksmen missed regularly. That year, she entered her first local competition. The other shooters were older men, ranchers, ex-soldiers, hobbyists. When she signed her name on the registration board, a few of them smirked. "Sweetheart," one of them said, "you sure you're in the right event?" Maya had smiled politely. Only one way to find out. When she took her first shot, the laughter stopped. By the time the final round came, Maya had outscored every competitor on the field. She didn't celebrate. She simply nodded, packed her rifle, and walked away. Winning wasn't the goal. Mastery was. But word spread quickly. People started calling her the quiet sniper. Invitations came for more competitions. Some welcomed her. Some mocked her. Others doubted her every victory. Probably a lucky streak. Wind must have been perfect. She's good, but she's no real sniper. She heard it all, and she learned to let it pass. One day, an older veteran named Tom Reyes approached her after a shoot. He'd been watching her for months. "You've got your father's hands," he said. Maya blinked. "You knew him?" Tom nodded. "Served with him in '03. Best damn shot I ever saw. But you? You've got something else he didn't. What's that?" she asked. "Patience," he said. "He shot to protect. You shoot to understand." He became her mentor, taught her small things most shooters ignored. The heartbeat method, reading mirage waves, feeling humidity through skin. Under his guidance, Maya went from excellent to extraordinary. But the world outside the range was cruel. At one national event, a famous marksman laughed at her introduction. "A girl from Montana? What's next? A toddler with a slingshot?" Maya didn't argue. She simply stepped to the line, exhaled, and hit 5 bullseyes in a row. The same man went silent for the rest of the day. Even with a rising reputation, Maya stayed humble. She never bragged, never mocked others. But arrogance always found its way to her, especially in men who couldn't accept that someone like her could surpass them. And that arrogance had a name now: Luke Bradford. She had met him just 2 months before the Wyoming Challenge. Luke was a decorated Marine sniper, known for his confidence and competitive streak. When he first saw her name on the registration board, he'd laughed. "You're good, Collins," he'd told her during introductions. "But out here, this isn't about proving something. It's about knowing your place." She had smiled. "I do." He didn't understand what she meant. He would soon. Now, sitting in her truck after that first match, the desert wind brushing against the windows, Maya thought about how far she'd come. Every bruise, every insult, every sleepless night in the freezing woods had led her here, to this moment where she'd done what others said was impossible. But she also knew this wasn't the end. The challenge had changed. It wasn't just about her skill anymore. It had become something symbolic, a test of discipline versus ego, respect versus ridicule. And now, Luke had thrown down his second challenge, blindfolded. Maya closed her eyes and rested her hand on her father's rifle case beside her. She could almost hear his voice, soft and calm in her memory. The eyes see distance, but the heart sees truth. If you can feel it, you can hit it, she whispered to the empty air. Then I'll feel it, Dad. When she opened her eyes, the last light of the day glinted off the horizon. She started the truck, the engine humming like a promise. As she drove away from the range, her reflection in the rear-view mirror was steady. Not the face of a young woman chasing validation, but of one preparing for something greater. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she could still hear the laughter of those who mocked her. But it no longer stung. It only reminded her why she kept going. Because the truth was simple, Maya didn't shoot to silence others. She shot to hear the quiet inside herself. And soon, the entire world would witness what that kind of silence could do. The Wyoming sun rose sharp and white the next morning, slicing through the mist that hovered over the desert range. The air carried a silence so deep it almost hummed, the kind of silence that existed before something unforgettable happened. Maya arrived before anyone else. The dust crunched softly beneath her boots as she walked across the open stretch of sand toward her usual firing spot. Her truck sat parked in the distance, its engine ticking as it cooled. She unpacked her rifle. Her father's old M40A5, restored and modified with precision. She cleaned the barrel, checked the scope alignment, and adjusted the bipod. Every motion was a ritual. Not for luck, but for clarity. When she was done, she sat on the sand, closed her eyes, and simply breathed. The range was quiet except for the low whisper of wind brushing across the dunes. The world felt still, as if even the earth was waiting to see what would happen next. By mid-morning, the other shooters began to arrive. Trucks and SUVs lined up behind the viewing area, people carrying spotting scopes, cameras, coolers. Word had spread. A crowd was forming, far more than any normal practice day. And at the center of that crowd, stepping out of his black pickup with mirrored sunglasses and a confident smirk, was Luke Bradford. "Morning, Collins," he called, his voice echoing across the flat land. "I was afraid you'd back out." Maya didn't look up. She was adjusting her rifle, calm and unhurried. "I said I'd be here," she replied. Luke chuckled, walking over with his hands in his pockets. "You know, you didn't have to show. Nobody would have blamed you. A blindfold shot at 2,000 meters? You'll be lucky to even hit the hill." Maya met his gaze for the first time. "Then I guess luck's about to get tested." The tension was electric, not loud, but simmering. The kind that prickled the air. They both knew what this meant. To Luke, it was a contest, a way to prove that discipline and experience still outranked raw talent. To Maya, it was something else entirely. It was about control, about silence, about showing that mastery wasn't about the eye, but about understanding. The organizers, sensing the crowd's excitement, decided to make it official, a public exhibition shot. They set up cameras, measured the distance exactly, 2,000 meters, confirmed by GPS. The target was a steel plate, painted bright red, standing in the far distance, where the heat shimmered like a living thing. As they prepared, Luke took his shot first. He wasn't blindfolded. He didn't need to be. His confidence alone was the blindfold he wore. He lay down, lined up his sights, adjusted for wind, and fired. The first shot rang out, a deep, echoing crack. The spotter called, "Miss," half a meter low. Luke frowned slightly, adjusted, and fired again. "Hit, center right." The crowd clapped lightly. Luke stood, gave a small bow, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "That, ladies and gentlemen, is how it's done," with eyes open. Murmurs of laughter rippled through the spectators. All eyes turned to Maya. She walked to the line without a word. Tom Reyes, her mentor, stood nearby, quietly watching. "You don't have to do this, Maya," he said under his breath. "No one expects you to." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I will." Luke crossed his arms, smirking. "You sure you don't want a smaller target? Or maybe a warm-up shot first?" Maya ignored him. She knelt, carefully set her rifle on the mat, and began her preparation. First, she calibrated her breathing. Slow, measured. Inhale, hold, exhale. Her heartbeat slowed. Her fingers stopped trembling. She adjusted her rifle for elevation, checked her scope, and then reached into her bag. She pulled out a black blindfold. The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "She's really gonna do it." Maya tied the blindfold around her head, knotting it tight. The world went dark. Luke's voice came again, mocking but uneasy. "You can't hit what you can't see, sweetheart." Maya tilted her head slightly. That's the difference between sight and focus. Tom watched closely. He knew this wasn't about showing off. It was about trust. Trusting her instinct, her training, her understanding of the wind, the air, and herself. The crowd grew quiet. Even Luke fell silent. Maya took one deep breath. The desert wind whispered against her cheek. She could feel it, about 6 miles per hour, drifting from left to right. She adjusted the turret 3 clicks. The sun's heat shimmered against the metal of her rifle. The air density felt slightly lower. She accounted for that in her breathing rhythm. She pressed her cheek to the stock, steady, calm. In her mind, she could hear her father's voice, faint but clear as ever. "Don't aim for what you see. Aim for what you know." She squeezed the trigger. The sound of the shot rolled through the desert like thunder. The echo came back. 1, 2, And then, faintly in the distance, the unmistakable clang of bullet meeting steel. For a second, no one moved. Then the spotter shouted, "Hit! Center mass!" 2,000 meters. The silence that followed was deafening. Luke's smirk vanished. He blinked, stunned, as if the laws of physics had just betrayed him. Maya stayed still for a long moment, breathing evenly, the rifle steady in her hands. Then she removed the blindfold slowly. Her eyes opened, calm, unshaken. She looked across the range, straight at Luke. "Never underestimate silence," she said softly. The crowd erupted. Applause, shouts, cheers. It was chaos. People rushed forward, recording on their phones, trying to talk to her, to touch her shoulder, to ask how she did it. But Maya barely reacted. She stood, packed her rifle back into its case, and started walking toward her truck. Tom caught up with her halfway. "You made history back there," he said, his voice trembling with pride. She smiled faintly. "I didn't make history, Tom. I just listened." "Listened to what?" She looked up at the sky. Everything. Back at the range, Luke stood frozen, staring at the steel plate in disbelief. It wasn't just that she had hit it blindfolded. It was that she'd done it with peace, while he had fired with pride. A reporter approached him, microphone ready. "Mr. Bradford, any thoughts?" He hesitated, jaw tight. "She's better than I thought," he finally muttered. But Maya didn't hear that. She was already driving away, the horizon swallowing her truck as the wind carried the faint metallic echo of her shot. A sound that would be replayed across the internet for weeks, earning millions of views and changing everything about how people saw her. From that day, she wasn't just Maya Collins, the quiet sniper. She was something else entirely. A symbol of what happens when patience defeats arrogance, when focus defeats doubt, when silence defeats noise. She had done what no one believed possible, not for fame, not for applause, but for understanding. As she drove toward the edge of the desert, the radio silent, her father's words drifted back into her mind. The eyes are for seeing. The heart is for believing. The mind, that's for the shot. She smiled faintly, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was chasing his shadow. She felt like she had finally caught up to it and walked beyond. The desert wind had carried her bullet 2,000 meters that morning, but by evening, that same wind carried her name across the world. By nightfall, the video of her blindfolded shot had already hit 3 million views on YouTube. By dawn, it had reached 20. Someone had uploaded the full footage, the silence before her shot, the sound of impact, and the stunned expression on Luke Bradford's face. The title read, "She did the impossible minus 2,000-meter blindfolded shot. Maya Collins makes history." Maya didn't even know about it at first. She had driven straight back to Bozeman, exhausted but calm, and gone to sleep without checking her phone. The world outside, however, had erupted. By the next morning, her email was flooded. Dozens of journalists, hundreds of social media mentions, television networks requesting interviews, sponsors offering contracts. Hashtags like #BlindfoldSniper, #MayaCollins, and #SilenceWins were trending in over 15 countries. When Maya finally opened her phone, it buzzed continuously in her hands. She stared at the notifications for a long while, expression unreadable. Then she sighed and set it down on the counter beside a cold cup of coffee. Fame had never been her goal. In fact, it frightened her. Her mother was the first to call. "Sweetheart, you're on TV." Sarah's voice was bubbling with disbelief. "CNN, Fox, BBC, they're all showing your video. My God, people are calling you a miracle." Maya rubbed her eyes. "It's just a shot, Mom." "No," her mother said gently. "It's not. It's hope. You showed the world something impossible can be done. Maya smiled faintly. Maybe, but I wasn't trying to prove that. I just wanted to see if I could listen clearly enough. Sarah paused. You always say that. Listen. Listen to what? Maya looked toward the window. The Montana mountains stood quiet under the morning light. The silence, she whispered. It never lies. Within 2 days, the offers started pouring in. A defense company wanted her to test their rifles. A luxury optics brand offered her 6 figures to endorse their scopes. A Netflix producer emailed her agent a documentary proposal titled The Girl Who Shot Without Sight. But Maya refused most of them. She agreed to only one interview with a small podcast called True Aim. The host, a retired marksman named Charlie Weaver, spoke softly, respectfully, and let her talk. During that interview, Maya said something that would go viral on its own. It wasn't about hitting a target. It was about trusting everything I've learned. You don't need eyes to see. You need presence. That quote became a phenomenon. It was printed on t-shirts, memes, even motivational posters. But fame comes with noise, and noise comes with distortion. Some called her a prodigy. Others called her a fraud. Skeptics on shooting forums claimed the footage was edited. There's no way she could have done that, one comment read. Wind drift alone makes it impossible. Luke Bradford himself didn't speak publicly, not yet. But his silence spoke louder than denial. Still, Maya didn't react. She ignored the gossip, the debates, the arguments. Every morning, she went to the range alone, just as she always had. Until one afternoon, Tom Reyes showed up unannounced. He parked beside her truck, leaned on the hood, and watched her line up a 1,500-meter shot with quiet precision. When she finished, he asked, "How's fame treating you?" She smirked slightly. Like a hurricane. It's loud. I'm trying not to get blown away. Tom nodded. You handled that shot better than anyone I've ever seen. But fame's a different kind of wind, kid. It doesn't just test your aim. It tests your balance. She set the rifle down, thoughtful. I didn't ask for it. Doesn't matter. You earned it. I don't want it, she said softly. People are making me into something I'm not. Tom looked at her for a long time, then said, You can't control what they see. You can only control what you give them. That night, Maya stayed up late scrolling through online comments. Amid the chaos, one caught her eye. It read, her father would be proud. For the first time in weeks, tears stung her eyes. She clicked the profile. It was from a veterans group, a forum dedicated to her father's old unit. They had shared photos of Daniel Collins, standing tall in his uniform, rifle in hand. Beneath it, someone had written, like father, like daughter, both warriors of focus. Maya closed her laptop and sat in the dark. She thought about her father, about the letter she'd never read, the one her mother had said he'd written before deployment. She had never opened it. She wasn't ready then. But now, she reached for the box under her bed, the one that still smelled faintly of oil and cedar. Inside lay the folded letter. The ink was faded, the paper brittle. She opened it slowly and began to read. My little girl, if you're reading this, I'm not there to tell you what I wanted most. Don't let fear choose your path. The world will tell you what you can't do, but you'll know when to listen and when to ignore the noise. Trust that feeling. It's more accurate than any rifle. Her hands trembled as she read the final lines. The Collins don't shoot for glory. We shoot for peace inside ourselves. Tears fell silently onto the paper. She realized then that her journey hadn't just been about precision or skill. It was about understanding her father, and through that, understanding herself. The next morning, Maya made a decision. Instead of chasing interviews or defending herself online, she'd use her newfound voice to teach. She started small, a YouTube channel called Stillness in Motion. Her first video wasn't about shooting. It was about focus. She stood in a quiet field at sunrise, hair tied back, wearing no makeup, and said simply, "Before you hit any target, you have to listen to the wind, to your breath, to your thoughts. The world's full of noise. But mastery begins when you find the silence beneath it." The video blew up instantly. Millions watched. But this time, the comments weren't about disbelief. They were about connection. Her words saved me from panic attacks. She's teaching me patience. This isn't about guns. It's about life. Maya smiled as she read them. For once, the world wasn't mocking her. It was learning from her. Still, not everyone was happy. Luke Bradford finally broke his silence in an interview on national television. "I don't believe it was real," he said flatly. "Maybe the wind carried her shot. Maybe it was luck. But blindfolded at 2,000 meters? Come on." The reporter pressed him. "Are you saying it was staged?" "I'm saying it's suspicious," he replied. "If she's that good, let her do it again. Live." The clip went viral overnight. Comments flooded in. Hashtag Maya vs. Luke began trending. People demanded a rematch. At first, Maya ignored it. She didn't care about proving anything. But Tom saw it differently. Sometimes, he told her, silence isn't enough. Sometimes the world needs a second echo to believe the first one was real. Maya hesitated. The idea of performing again, not for understanding, but for validation, felt wrong. But she also knew that doubt had a way of erasing truth. That evening, she sat by her window, the letter from her father open beside her. His words echoed softly in her mind. "The world will tell you what you can't do. Trust what you feel." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Then I'll do it again." The next morning, she sent one short message to the National Long-Range Shooting Federation. "I accept the rematch." And just like that, the stage was set for the most anticipated shooting event in modern history. The world watching, the skeptics waiting, and Maya preparing to face not just Luke Bradford, but her own legacy. The air in Nevada's Black Rock Desert shimmered with heat. A temporary range had been built for the rematch, a massive, open expanse stretching farther than the eye could comfortably follow. Drones hovered overhead, broadcasting every angle to the world. Maya Collins stood quietly behind the firing line, her hair tied back, her rifle case open beside her. Around her swirled hundreds of people, journalists, technicians, military representatives, influencers, even skeptics holding banners that read, "Let's see it live." Real or rigged? The world had tuned in. Over 50 million people were watching online. For Maya, the crowd felt distant, like ocean waves crashing miles away. Her heartbeat was steady, her breaths even. But deep down, beneath her calm surface, something stirred fear. Not of failure, but of noise. For months, she had lived in quiet places, teaching others about focus and stillness. Now she stood in a world of lights, microphones, and shouting voices. The silence she loved was gone. Tom Reyes was beside her, clipboard in hand, eyes thoughtful. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said softly. "Just listening." "Listening to what?" "The chaos." He smiled. "And what's it saying?" "That I have to be quieter than ever." Across the range, Luke Bradford adjusted his rifle, surrounded by a small crowd of cameramen and admirers. His confidence was back, sharp as ever. He wore a black tactical vest, his name stitched in bold white letters across the chest. When he saw Maya watching him, he grinned and raised a hand. "Hope you brought your lucky blindfold." She gave a polite nod, but said nothing. To her, his noise didn't matter. She wasn't here to defeat Luke. She was here to face herself. The announcer's voice boomed across the range. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most anticipated exhibition in modern marksmanship history. Maya Collins versus Luke Bradford. 2,000 meters, live, no edits, no retakes. The crowd erupted in cheers. Tom whispered, "Remember, breathe, feel, trust." She nodded. Luke stepped up first. He was given the same conditions as before. One steel plate at exactly 2,000 meters. The wind was moderate, about 7 miles per hour from the west. Luke lined up his rifle with dramatic flair, looked back at the cameras, and winked. Then he fired. Crack. The spotter called, "Hit." Slight right of center. The audience cheered. Luke fired again. Another hit. He turned toward Maya with a smug smile. "Your turn, legend." Maya didn't flinch. She knelt beside her rifle, opened her case, and began her ritual, wiping the barrel, checking the scope, adjusting the bipod legs until everything was symmetrical. The crowd went quiet, waiting. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the blindfold. A low gasp rippled through the audience. She held it for a moment, feeling the weight of it in her hand. Not just the cloth, but everything it symbolized. Faith, discipline, her father's memory, and silence itself. Tom watched her tie it on. He had seen many marksmen break under pressure. But Maya was something else entirely. Her calm wasn't performance, it was her armor. Once the blindfold was secure, Maya lowered herself into position. The sand pressed cool against her elbows. The air smelled faintly of dust and oil. "Shooter ready?" The announcer called. She exhaled slowly. "Ready." The range fell silent. No birds, no voices. Only wind. Maya felt it, brushing across her cheek, tugging slightly at the tip of her hair. She imagined the world around her as sound waves and temperature, a map her mind could read even without her eyes. In the dark behind the blindfold, she saw her father. Not his face, just his presence. His voice whispered softly, "Don't shoot for the noise, Maya. Shoot for the stillness between it." She adjusted the scope based on feel, 3 clicks left, 2 up. Her fingers found the trigger. She breathed in, held, breathed out, and fired. Crack! The sound stretched across the desert like thunder rolling over dunes. 2 seconds. 3, 4. Then, clang, the sound of metal being struck. The spotter's voice broke through the silence. Hit. Center mass. The crowd exploded. Cheers, screams, disbelief. People jumped to their feet. Drones zoomed in on the steel plate, showing a perfect mark dead in the center. Tom let out a shaky breath. She did it again. Luke stood frozen, disbelief etched across his face. "No way," he muttered. But Maya wasn't celebrating. She stayed prone for a few seconds longer, breathing calmly, grounding herself. Then she lifted the blindfold off. The light hit her eyes, and she blinked, adjusting to the world again. The sound of the cheering crowd rolled over her like a wave, but she didn't flinch. She slowly stood, slung her rifle over her shoulder, and turned to face the cameras. Her expression was serene, her eyes quiet. The announcer's voice rang out. Unbelievable. 2,000 meters, blindfolded, love, and a perfect center hit. Maya Collins has done it again. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing. One shouted, "Maya, how did you do it? How do you see the target without your eyes?" She smiled faintly and replied, "The world tells you that sight is everything. But if you trust the world, you'll miss. If you trust yourself, you'll never need to see." The quote echoed across the internet within hours. As she stepped off the line, Luke approached her, his earlier arrogance replaced by awe. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then finally, he held out his hand. "You proved me wrong," he said quietly. Maya took his hand. "I wasn't trying to." He frowned slightly. "Then what were you trying to do?" "Listen," she said. "To see how quiet I could become." Luke nodded, speechless. Tom came forward, beaming. "You did it, kid. Twice. The world's never going to forget this." But Maya looked distant. "I don't want them to remember me for the shot," she said softly. "I want them to remember why I took it." That evening, after the event ended and the reporters packed up, Maya stayed behind. The desert was empty again. The lights turned off, the cameras gone. She walked alone to the 2,000-meter mark, where the steel plate still stood, the bullet dent shining in the moonlight. She ran her fingers over the metal, feeling the cool curve of the impact. "We did it, Dad," she whispered. The desert wind picked up, soft and steady, brushing her hair like an answer. She closed her eyes and smiled. But behind that calm smile was a storm. Because deep down, she knew this moment, this quiet triumph, would come with a cost. Fame was louder now, and with every echo of her shot, more eyes would turn toward her, not all of them kind. And somewhere, beyond the glow of cameras and headlines, darker intentions were forming. People who saw her not as a symbol of peace, but as a weapon of potential. For now, though, Maya didn't think of that. She stood beneath the moonlight, her father's words replaying in her mind. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the mastery of it. She took one last look at the target, turned, and walked back toward her truck, her silhouette small against the vast desert. The cameras had gone quiet, but the world would not. Because that night, across every news channel and social feed, one phrase trended globally: "The blindfold sniper does it again." And though Maya had sought silence all her life, she had now become the loudest whisper the world had ever heard. The world had fallen in love with Maya Collins, the blindfold sniper. But love, as she would soon realize, is rarely simple. Within a week of her second historic shot, the emails, calls, and invitations intensified. Government officials, defense contractors, media executives, and even wealthy private collectors sought to meet with her, each offering money, fame, influence, and in some cases, morally ambiguous contracts. Maya sat at her kitchen table in Bozeman, staring at her phone. The screen glowed with dozens of missed calls, dozens more messages, and at least 10 urgent emails from representatives with official-looking seals. "Mom," she said quietly, "I didn't sign up for this. I just shot a target." Sarah Collins, folding laundry nearby, glanced up. "I know, sweetheart. But people are seeing more than a shot. They're seeing hope, precision, something impossible. And some of them want to own it." Maya pinched the bridge of her nose. She didn't want to own it. She didn't want it broadcast, and she certainly didn't want to monetize it. But every call and email carried an undercurrent of expectation. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the email came from the Department of Defense. Subject line: "Official request for collaboration, Maya Collins." She opened it cautiously. The letter was formal, respectful, but the intent was clear. They wanted her skill, her training methods, and her precision, for programs she wasn't sure she could condone. She read through it once, twice. Finally, she exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. "I can't do this," she whispered. "You don't have to," Tom Reyes said over the phone, his tone calm but firm. "You set the standard. That doesn't mean you owe anyone anything." "I know," she replied, but the unease in her chest wouldn't subside. Over the next few days, the pressure escalated. Sponsors wanted her to attend promotional events. TV networks scheduled interviews with prime-time visibility. Social media influencers flooded her accounts with requests for endorsements and collaborations. Maya's quiet life was vanishing beneath a tidal wave of expectation. She couldn't train in peace anymore. Every practice session had an audience. Every range visit was photographed. And even her mentor, Tom, worried that the constant exposure would erode her focus. One evening, she met Luke Bradford unexpectedly at a charity event for veterans. He wasn't mocking anymore. Instead, he was polite, measured, almost hesitant. "I wanted to say congrats," he said quietly. "You handled the fame better than I expected." Maya gave a small smile. "It's not easy." Luke nodded, his gaze distant. "It's never just about the shot, is it?" "No," she replied. "It's about everything after it. The noise, the attention, the expectation. That's the hardest target." Luke didn't answer. The conversation ended there, leaving Maya with an odd sense of peace and unease. By the following week, invitations arrived from international shooting competitions, private defense firms, and even university research programs interested in her mental focus techniques. One particularly insistent email came from a tech billionaire offering to sponsor a precision institute under her name. The condition: she would train individuals according to his vision, with minimal input from her. Maya stared at the screen. Her heart raced. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "The Collins don't shoot for glory. We shoot for peace inside ourselves. Peace, not fame. Not money. Not influence." She closed her laptop. That night, she went out to the field behind her house, the same field where she had trained alone for years. The wind whispered through the trees. Crickets hummed in the distance. The world felt quiet again, almost sacred. She knelt in the dirt, eyes closed, breathing deep. She could feel her father's presence in every gust of wind, in every rhythm of her heartbeat. Tom arrived silently behind her. "You okay?" he asked. She opened her eyes, letting the moonlight reflect in them. "I have to be careful," she said. "I can't let them take what I learned and turn it into something I don't recognize." Tom nodded. "That's why you always train the way you do, for yourself first. For peace. But how do I say no?" she asked, frustration tinged with fear. "Everyone wants something from me. And if I refuse, they'll think I'm ungrateful. Or worse, they'll try to manipulate me into compliance." "You remember your father's letter?" Tom asked. She nodded. "Trust what you feel. That's all you need," he said. "Not fame, not approval, not fortune. Only trust in yourself and in what you've earned." Maya exhaled slowly. "Then I guess it's time to stop answering the phone?" Tom chuckled softly. Might be the first smart decision since all of this started. Despite her resolve, the world wouldn't leave her alone. News outlets published op-eds debating whether her skills should be nationalized or exploited for defense purposes. Social media exploded with debates, some praising her, others accusing her of staging or exaggerating her accomplishments. Even Luke, despite his earlier respect, wasn't immune to the pressure of public attention. He reached out to her indirectly, a message that read, "People want to see you fail. Stay sharp." It was oddly supportive, though couched in his usual competitiveness. Maya didn't reply. She didn't need to. One morning, the local sheriff stopped by her home, not as an officer, but as a concerned neighbor. "Maya, I've seen the crowds, the media vans. People are starting to swarm your property." "I know," she replied. I can't control it. I don't even know how to." The sheriff looked thoughtful. "You might want to think about security measures. Fame has a way of making people forget boundaries. She nodded silently. By now, Maya realized something vital. Her skill had made her famous, but her discipline had made her targeted. The world didn't just admire her. Some people wanted to use her. Some wanted to discredit her. Some simply wanted to control her narrative. She knew she couldn't avoid it forever, but she could choose how to face it. That evening, she wrote in her journal, the one her father had started, "I have learned to trust the wind, to trust the silence, to trust my hands. Now I must learn to trust myself against the world. They cannot know my peace until I choose to show it." Tom read over her shoulder. "You've grown so much since that first blindfolded shot," he said quietly. Maya didn't respond. She closed the journal and stared at the stars. She felt small but grounded. For the first time, she realized that the battle ahead wasn't against Luke, against skeptics, or against fame itself. It was against losing herself in it all. The next morning, she returned to the field, rifle in hand, alone. The wind was gentle. The world was quiet. She aimed at a target 200 meters away, much closer than the last shot, and fired. Crack. The bullet hit dead center. She smiled. She still had control. And that control was the one thing nobody could take from her. Because for Maya, mastery was never about applause. It was never about recognition. It was about the silence beneath the noise, the space where she could hear her father's voice, steady and calm, guiding her through the chaos. And she realized then that, no matter what the world demanded, no one could ever take that from her. The phone could ring endlessly. The offers could flood in. The world could watch. But Maya Collins had discovered the one target she would always hit, herself. Months had passed since the Nevada rematch. Maya Collins was no longer just a name whispered among shooting enthusiasts. She had become a global symbol of discipline, patience, and quiet mastery. Yet the world outside remained relentless. Every day brought new emails, invitations, contracts, and requests. Governments sought her expertise. Media sought her image. Brands sought her endorsement. Every opportunity came wrapped in expectations to perform, to speak, to define herself by other people's standards. But Maya had changed. She had learned the art of choosing battles carefully, of understanding where her skill was meant to serve her own purpose, not the agendas of others. Her morning routine remained sacred. Wake before dawn, brew coffee, take a rifle to the quiet field behind her house. There, in the soft glow of sunrise, she could still hear the wind, the whisper of the pines, and the invisible presence of her father, guiding every breath, every movement. Tom Reyes joined her that morning, carrying a small notebook. "You've been avoiding the invitations," he said gently. "Even the international competitions. People are starting to question if you're hiding." Maya smiled faintly. "I'm not hiding. I'm choosing." Tom nodded. "Good. But I think it's time you decide what kind of legacy you want to leave. Not for the world, for you." She paused, looking at the horizon where the mountains met the sky. "My father always said, mastery is measured not by recognition, but by the silence beneath it. I've done enough for others to see. Now I need to do something that matters to me." That something came in the form of a challenge she herself designed. Not a rematch, not a viral stunt, not a competition. She reached out to the National Long Range Shooting Federation, proposing a live demonstration. One shot, 2,500 meters, fully blindfolded, with no wind gauges, no assistance, and only her instincts and training to guide her. The Federation agreed. It was a dangerous challenge, even for the world's best marksmen, and the media was immediately interested. But Maya insisted that the event focus not on spectacle, but on precision, preparation, and discipline. The day arrived, and a crowd gathered in the Nevada desert once again. Cameras, drones, and spectators buzzed with excitement. The target, a steel plate painted bright white, sat far beyond the visible horizon. Luke Bradford appeared among the crowd. He no longer carried arrogance. Instead, he wore quiet respect. "You really are doing it," he said softly when he saw Maya kneeling at the firing line. "I am," she replied. "This is for me, not anyone else." The sun rose, painting the desert in gold and shadow. The wind was calm but unpredictable, rippling across the sand in invisible currents. Maya adjusted her stance, her rifle resting on the sand in perfect alignment. Tom stood nearby, silent. He had taught her everything he could, but now he could only watch. Maya closed her eyes, tying the black blindfold firmly around her head. Darkness enveloped her. The world melted away. She breathed in slowly. 1, 2, 3. She breathed out slowly. 1, 2, 3. Her father's words returned, strong and unwavering. The eyes see distance. The heart sees truth. If you can feel it, you can hit it. Her hands found the rifle. She adjusted the bipod slightly, gauging the sand beneath her elbows. She felt the rhythm of the earth, the slight vibration of distant insects, the subtle pull of the wind against her cheek. The world was silent, or rather, she was silent within it. She exhaled, focused, and pressed the trigger. Crack! The bullet traveled farther than any she had fired before. The desert echoed, and for a long moment, nothing else seemed to exist. Then, faintly, a metallic clang, clear, resonant, perfect. The crowd erupted. Drones zoomed in, showing the steel plate dented exactly in the center. Every eye in the desert stared in disbelief. Every camera recorded history. Luke Bradford approached slowly, awe etched into his features. I don't even know what to say," he admitted. Maya removed the blindfold, her eyes calm, her face serene. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She simply knelt by the steel plate, running her fingers over the perfect mark. "It's not about the distance," she said quietly to no one in particular. "It's about listening and trusting yourself enough to act when everything else fades away." For the first time, Maya realized that her journey, from Bozeman to Montana fields, to Nevada deserts, to the world's eyes, had always been about one thing: control. Control of her mind, her focus, and her peace. After the demonstration, the crowd gradually dispersed, leaving Maya and Tom alone in the desert. "You did it," Tom said. "Not just a record, not just history. You did it for you." Maya nodded, the wind lifting her hair. "I didn't need validation. I needed certainty. And now I have it." She looked toward the horizon, the steel plate gleaming under the sunlight. This is the legacy I want. Not fame, not money, not applause. Just mastery. Tom smiled, and the world saw it anyway. "Yes," she said, "and they will remember it, but they won't understand it fully. That's fine. They never needed to. I do." In the months that followed, Maya chose her path carefully. She accepted a few invitations, educational programs, speaking engagements about focus and discipline, documentaries that explored her philosophy rather than her celebrity. She never chased publicity. She never allowed herself to be commodified. The world, mesmerized by her blindfolded feats, continued to watch and wonder, but Maya's inner life remained untouchable. The silence she had cultivated since childhood was now her sanctuary, and her mastery complete. Luke Bradford reached out one final time. "You changed the way I see precision," he said. "Not just shooting, life itself." Maya replied simply, "Precision isn't about hitting a target. It's about knowing the target exists and understanding your path to it." He nodded. "I think I understand now." Maya returned to Montana, her quiet life restored. She spent mornings in the woods, practicing, teaching, listening. Students came to learn her methods, not just to shoot, but to cultivate the discipline and calm she had developed over years of solitude. And at night, when the stars stretched across the sky and the wind whispered through the pines, Maya Collins would kneel beside her father's old rifle case, close her eyes, and feel his presence. The world may have watched her every move, celebrated her impossible shots, and called her names, prodigy, legend, the blindfold sniper, but none of it mattered. She had found what her father had taught her to seek: mastery, silence, peace. Her story, the shot at 2,000 meters, the rematch, the viral fame, the blindfolded triumphs, became legend not because of spectacle, but because it embodied something deeper. A lesson that even the loudest world could not overpower. True mastery is measured not by what others see, but by what you can hear within yourself. And so, the girl from Bozeman, Montana, who had once stared at her father's rifle case and wondered if she could ever understand him, became a symbol of what it means to live, to focus, and to act with unwavering purpose. Maya Collins had fired her last legendary shot, and in doing so, had achieved a life more remarkable than fame could ever provide. She had shot the world in silence, and she had hit the target perfectly.